Okay, welcome to the series 6, episode 1 of Entangled discussions. We're going to be talking about entangling the old with the new. I am not John Barnes. My name's Natalie Hills, and today I'm going to be your hostess with the mostess. John's going to be joining us on the panel. So for those of you that are actually new to these talks, we are a friendly and inclusive group and we encourage interaction. So please use the chat box for any questions that come up, and we will pass those on to our panel at the end. If you are comfortable taking the mic, there's also the opportunity to join the conversation during the event as well. These talks are recorded and they go onto our Entangled Discussions YouTube channel, and they are shared on LinkedIn as well. So on our panel today, we have John Barnes, we have Rupesh Shrivastava, we've got Celia Young, and we've got Esperanza Cuenca Gomez as well joining us today. We only have Celia for about 25 minutes now, so I'm going to pass directly over to Celia to start off our discussion, and really just to kind of give us your observations on 2021, any challenges or achievements that you feel are worth mentioning.
I should probably start with I actually moved out of the quantum field to some degree when in September, so it was a bit of a shame that I left the quantum field, but I'm still very much based in research and innovation landscape, and I now work for Diamond Light Source, which is one of the UK's synchrotron facility essentially. And this is brilliant, because I think one of the things that it is very clear, especially Rupesh and I noticed coming from the quantum computing and simulation hub, was that COVID did really throw a massive spanner in the works. Everyone was talking about the same type of thing, and I think we had a lot of talks that kind of reiterated how everyone had come together in terms of technological advancements. And it was a broader kind of collaboration in that we could talk to each other from further away geographically, which was quite nice. So that was a bit of a sad thing, but actually some good things have come out of it. And I think I'd say the pace at which I've seen quantum grow, whether being part of the hub or being outside within a research facility, quantum touches on absolutely everything. And I guess from a non-biased perspective, when I was in the hub, now being outside of the hub, it's just nice to see it's more of a, oh, this is not just something I was working towards, it's actually happening in real life. So it was quite a nice thing to have, and just to see that, from a non-biased perspective, quantum genuinely is touching on absolutely everything. And I'm so proud to have been part of that, and hopefully be part of it for years to come. So
thanks, Celia. And also just wanted to introduce Daniel Oyer to our panel today as well. I'll pass over to you, Daniel, if you want to share any observations of achievements or challenges in 2021.
Oh, thank you. Apologies for being slightly late. Yes, I mean, 2021 was, I think, a consolidation of a lot of the efforts which are happening in space quantum communication satellite PKD, especially within Europe, with the EuroQCI, European Quantum Communication Infrastructure, really coming on stream now. So this has been an initiative that has been building up in Europe within the last couple of years, came out of like the quantum flagship, white papers, the QT space cost action. And so I think, this last year has really seen an amalgamation of all the efforts that have gone into this, into quite a coherent program of work, which really joins together the European Commission as well as ESA, European Space Agency, to develop a Europe-spanning quantum network. So I think I see that's the main development in my area. I think we're still a lot of the world's still catching up from the pioneering experiments from Misius in China, and I think 2021, obviously we're coming out of we're still in the middle of COVID, but I think after getting used to 2020, the situation 2020. I think people are coming back, getting back on track and trying to progress in this area and really build the next space quantum internet.
Thanks, Daniel. And Esperanza, over to you.
Well, when I was thinking, listening to Celia and Daniel, it actually reflects also my views, because what I have been seeing during this year is an increased interest and curiosity, particularly from companies that one might think outside the quantum realm. And I think that is a very positive side. And on a more concrete note, and this is from a very personal point of view, I am fascinated with quantum communications and quantum ultra secure communications and the importance this has across all industries and particularly for finance. So in the last Quantum Tech conference this September, I was thrilled when I heard Marco Pistoia, who leads the quantum efforts at JP Morgan, specifically talking about quantum communications, the importance for the financial industry, and his vision about this. And that was a highlight of the year for me. Yeah.
Lovely. And then last but not least, Rupesh.
Oh my goodness, where do I start? It's been an incredible year. So from a personal point of view, after over 5 years, I left the quantum computing simulation hub at Oxford, and bringing the expertise into building the quantum ecosystem to One Quantum Argentina. And one of the nice things about 2021 has been, aside from technological developments, so breaking the 100 qubit barrier, for instance, it's been the focus on people, and not just, and what I mean by that is not just on sort of diversity and inclusion type of things, but also when companies are getting involved, they are starting to see the difference in communication styles. So when you're talking to the quantum community, the engagement is different, and that's been a really positive force. So I think during this time we have together in this panel, there are lots and lots to talk about, because there's many things have happened.
I'm never going to live this down. Rupesh wasn't last at all. John, please give us your insights.
Yeah, I'll be the least. So kind of echoing the panel, really. Obviously 2020, people across the world had to live in a slightly different way, and there were lots of challenges, and we saw in 2021 how people turned those challenges into positives, and particularly within the quantum space, it's been really good to see that, despite these things, quantum has gone from strength to strength, both in terms of the people, the technology, the business, the wider interests, and all these things, I think, shows a real robustness across multiple different layers, and I think that's something that's really stood out this year, and probably needs a lot more unpacking than that, but we could be here all day, I think, each of us on that. So but yeah, I think that a lot of the themes are very similar to, or the observations are quite similar, but I think they cover a lot of different areas as well.
Yeah, and this actually reminds me of a fascinating conversation I was having this morning when we was talking specifically about the the ecosystem within quantum and how special it actually is. So just kind of going on from what Rupesh was speaking into there about how the engagement is different within this quantum community. Going forward into 2022 and beyond, how and with all of these different people kind of turning their heads and being interested in what it is that we're actually doing here in quantum and how they can incorporate that into their business. One of my big questions is, how do we keep or nurture what it is that we have that is so unique and so special, with the aim to kind of let out a little bit of the quantum ecosystem love into different industries? So I'm gonna pop that question straight to Rupesh.
That's a big question. So so for me, as I've said before, that the people side, it has traditionally been neglected in many organizations. And I'm saying this with over 20 years experience in startups, and having seen life in academia for over 5 years. It's very easy to get sort of stuck into a particular culture and then transfer all of that, especially for newcomers into the quantum industry. And that's what I'm worried about. Because when I look at companies, I know how hard it is to get a startup in any area going and then thriving. And to do that, you need a mission, you need values, you need purpose, and then you need people who can support that. So what I say is that if there is any erosion, corrosion, or breaks in the links from leadership through to delighting the customer, then you're destroying value. You're not creating it. You're not going to be motivating people. You're not going to be inspiring people. You're not going to be innovating as to the potential you could reach. And so there needs to be an emphasis. I mean, I remember when I was doing, when I was an undergraduate in my final year, submitting a project, I still remember this. You know, some of my peers were saying, "Well, why do we need to worry about good writing skills in English? You know, specifically, this is related to the apostrophe. Why do we care about apostrophes? We're physicists." And they didn't understand the importance of communicating their science. And if they didn't care about spelling or punctuation or grammar, how are you supposed to communicate it and be taken seriously by anyone? Right? And so so it's I think when John and I were on a panel on the Washington DC meetup, I kind of said there is this danger of you know, just being so hyper focused on silos that we become intelligent imbeciles, because we can't go horizontally. We can only go vertically and deeper, and that's important too. I got distracted because I saw on the chat. I bet Bob Koch cares about apostrophes for, you know, and absolutely for natural language processing stuff. So it's all of these sort of cross skills that you need: people skills, networking skills. So for example, I'm a mentor in Women in Quantum, and it's not about quantum. What I've been asked to do is what my mentee wants is to be able to build up self-confidence, to be able to walk into a room, to be able to know how to tackle groups of people, especially when you're feeling like an imposter. You know, all of these things are incredibly important.
Yeah, thank you for that. Celia, before you leave us, if you want to share.
I think the things that I'd like to add to what Rupesh has said, and you know, all of the skills that you need, I guess if you think about it from a you know, a most basic point of view, let's say I came into quantum, I didn't know anything about it, and for me, it's in my nature to question everything. So, I don't mind asking a silly question, because in my mind, it's not a silly question. If I don't ask, I don't know. And I guess quantum is one of those subjects that it's so hard to actually visualize in your mind. It's not something where, like, this is similar to gravity. You drop something, but you can't see gravity happening. It's just, you just know it's there from experience. And to some degree, quantum is one of those things where you can't necessarily visualize it. So in some sense, you're forced to ask silly questions, which in my opinion aren't silly questions. So it already starts to break down those barriers, because if you don't ask them, then you don't know, you won't be able to do any of your work. So I think this kind of goes back to what Rupesh has said in terms of changing the way we communicate with each other. It's not just a case of an individual and how you work within your silos. You essentially are forced to share the information that you want to spread on different levels, because otherwise you can't progress. There's also an element of, so I guess in that sense, that's transparency. So you're transparent in how you share information, data. But I think an integral part of how we communicate is also to do with transparency of, we could say that, and I've discussed this so many times before with loads of other people, we could say that quantum technology in general could solve, the biggest life crises, but that would be lying. We wouldn't be able to do it by tomorrow, but we would want to caveat that with, you could probably do it in the next number of years within these types of reasons. So if we take the element of what Rupesh has said in terms of people and communication, I completely agree. It's integral for this sector to grow with that understanding. And it's, I keep smiling about it every time I join a room of individuals who have anything to do with quantum. Like, my face lights up. Not that my face doesn't light up in my current role, but it's almost like it's home, because we've started the infrastructure from the bottom and we've built it up. And I'm quite comfortable asking not a silly question. So I guess to some degree, I hope that kind of answers your question, and I hope that everyone else in the community feels the same.
Definitely. Love that. And John, not forgetting you.
So yeah, I think kind of sort of echoing those comments, but I think that there's a real firm foundation that people are looking within quantum to do things more than just for their own personal benefit, but for the greater good. And I think it's important that those foundations are strong and as strong as possible, so that as the sort of classic and quantum interact, we want to be able to take the best things from the classic environment and keep the best things from the quantum environment. But and those foundations need to be strong, not to get washed away, and keep that the kind of the quantum conscious, if you like, and then spread the quantum dust to the classic industries. And an important thing of that is conversations like this and many others that occur, and having that the community understand that these things are important, that they care about, and actually they do have a stake in being able to maintain that. And with the roles that we have, obviously so a lot of people in quantum, as Rupesh said, have that kind of deep dive, thin aspect. Well, we kind of see that the whole vantage point. So we see, a foot deep and a mile wide, rather than a foot wide and a mile deep. And actually, I think that it is important to generate that message that actually there are lots of other people that feel the same way. And if we all pull together, that gives us the best possible chance of being successful in maintaining the things we all find so important.
Yes, couldn't agree more with that. And Esperanza.
Well, what I love this conversation is that lots of things that I have been thinking about are actually coming up. And for example, to focus on people is absolutely crucial. And when you think about what is a technology, what is a company, well, by itself, it's not much. It's all about the people who develop that technology, who use that technology, who make a company, who drive a company. It's all about the people and empowering those individuals and trying to gain a broad vision, while at the same time being able to dig deeper into some of the aspects of it. And again, as John mentioned, yeah, there is this feeling in the quantum community of doing things for the greater good, and that it's incredible, and it's happening right now. And I love how Celia said, ask questions. Yeah, I that strongly resonates with me. Ask all the questions you can, as the great physicist Sean Carroll said. Ask yourself questions and try to find answers. And hopefully these ideas will help to move forward the quantum community. And I really hope it stays this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because when John was speaking about the greater good, and then Esperanza, you've just brought that up again as well. I actually wrote down, like, what does the greater good look like? And I think for me, especially coming from, I completely agree with what Celia's saying as well, especially coming from a non-physics background, one of the beautiful things about this industry as a whole is nobody actually fully understands quantum. So actually, this is, from my perspective, this is how we kind of keep that kind of ecosystem going, is that we collaborate, is that we are constantly curious and always asking questions and not assuming that we should know those answers. But I'd be really interested to kind of gain a perspective on, again, moving forward into like the next year, especially with you know, that there's a lot of, we know that there's a lot of hype, and I think that there's a lot of focus on specific areas within quantum, so predominantly quantum computing, but there's so many other applications for quantum that are going to be used faster, and that can be used quicker than, you know, with quantum computing. So in terms of kind of looking forward and, you know, the greater good and helping people understand how quantum can be applied in their lives, like how do you foresee, like, let's kind of start making some predictions. We can look back on this, because me and John were talking about this the other day, like, how do you see the kind of the next year of quantum like panning out? Where would be the first applications? Do we think we're going to see the first applications within the next kind of 12 months? Celia, I reckon you've literally got like 1 minute. You might be able to squeeze something in.
Got a very short amount of time left. That's a really tricky question. I mean, quantum has the potential to do anything. I think we could, you know, I could list a number of things, whether they be a good prediction or not, you know, I wouldn't be able to say. But I think, you know, thinking about trying to answer this question specifically for me would be a case of, okay, you could list a number of things, A, B, and C, and my concern or the challenge there, I think, so indirectly answering your question, would be just to ensure that we caveat or make sure we're transparent when we share the information. So I could say that I can build the most perfect black box X and it would do this specific thing. But with anything technological, any concept, it needs reiterating over and over again. So to answer your question directly, I wouldn't want to specifically say that I've got any predictions for any technology that might specifically kind of be the winner. But I think we would need to be careful that we always have that feedback loop between industry and academia and the fundamentals to make sure that we're always reiterating our process. So I guess for now, I'm in a very fundamental space at Diamond Light Source. We look at quantum, you know, we have the ability to analyze quantum materials and how they work. And I can foresee that all of the research that we do within our organization could be using quantum materials for space or imaging or any type of thing like that. So I think whilst it's nice to think of actual specifics for technology, I would also be very careful to say it is a reiterative process, and it's the same for anything. I'm sure, you know, Henry Ford didn't build his first car in one. He probably went through a few times, probably used some square wheels or something at some point. So, you know, that type of thing. It's just something to keep an eye on. But I'd be interested to hear what everyone else has to say in terms of maybe an industrial point of view.
Yeah, I mean, John, what's your thoughts?
Yes, I think so. We've sort of seen the classic and quantum industries coming together, and I think that's something that's going to grow considerably next year. And not necessarily that we're going to be able to sequence complex molecules and have these incredible things that are further out. But I think that integration between businesses, that adoption, and it may just be that someone in the company becomes kind of a quantum person within that, starts to look at what they need to do. But I think that the sort of quantum dust being sprinkled outside of quantum, that's something that I think will grow at real pace next year, and a lot of it will be fact finding or whatever it might be, rather than making these huge promises that are being made by people outside of quantum. So with that comes the potential for hype and bubbles and things like that, which we need to safeguard against. But a level of excitement is important. I think if people weren't excited, I wonder what's wrong with them a little bit. But that's probably because I'm in the bubbles, and I can't see sort of outside of it so much. But I think that integration is something that's going to be really developed on next year, and it also comes down to keeping what is special and kind of taking what's right from outside, and we're already seeing some people that maybe their best interest isn't purely on quantum, and that's something that needs safeguarding against as well. But these things come in many shapes and sizes, so and communication and interaction and collaboration is important for so many reasons.
Yeah, definitely. I'd like to come back to what you just said, actually, on the next question about the focus on quantum. Bye, Celia. on the focus on quantum, I can't think exactly what it was that you just said now, but not actually being specifically on quantum. We'll come back to that. Esperantha.
Well, much of what has been said definitely resonates with me, and what I would like to see during the next year is the momentum going. That's it, the curiosity going, even this level of excitement going on, and also businesses starting to have the quantum conversation. I'd love to see that next year, as well as technological advancements, of course, like seeing progress in quantum error correction and scaling up quantum computers, and of course, the part of quantum communications. And all of these, and this is my personal point of view, all of these also being very grounded in a sense of being realistic and avoiding hype, because there are significant challenges in the quantum industry as well. And from other industries and other technological revolutions, we know that hype can be very dangerous. So my hope for the next year will be, in a sentence, to continue this momentum in a realistic way.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do we stay excited but not push it too far into the hype as well?
That's right. To keep, in a sense, grounded. And let's face it, from a technological perspective, the challenges are huge. And current quantum computers, they are limited in pretty substantial aspects.
Absolutely. Rupesh, what do you have to add?
Well, so I would say I would expect to see more sort of announcements in the following areas along cryptographic encryption. So real services and products being announced, or at least collaborations that lead you closer to product. I'm excited by the progress in engineering. So for me, whilst I'm very excited to see how the 100+ qubit systems perform, I'm more interested in the engineering story. I'm also interested in how the markets consolidate in the next year. Whether it's talent acquisition, it's easier to buy a big company to buy a smaller one to acquire the talent, than to try and recruit the talent internally. So it's going to be interesting in terms of how the markets move. I am both excited and cautious about the collaborations that are going on, because excited in terms of there are agreements between countries like the US, UK, and so on. But there's also division lines forming geopolitically. And how will that hamper things, especially when we need everyone to collaborate. But we live against a backdrop of the real world, and somehow we have to operate in all of that. And could this, here's one, could this be, that hasn't been mentioned, but could 2022 be the year of the emergence of the analog quantum simulator? And for me, that would be very exciting indeed. So a few predictions there.
Would anyone like to comment following what Rupesh just said?
If I may just drop in there.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, so thank you for having me. My name is Thomas. So on the question of analog quantum simulators, that's quite useful in the sense if you wanted to do it, quantum computing for simulating quantum physical processes, which is a very interesting area of quantum computing. But the problem with quantum simulators, particularly, analog quantum computing in general, is that doing error correction is incredibly difficult. And even if you look into quantum annealing, there is no general consensus, or there's no proposed method for error correction in that area either. So if I had to predict the future of analog quantum computing, I would say, well, that sounds quite like a NISQ technology, NISQ being noisy intermediate stage quantum, or quantum computers as they are today. So I would say, whilst that is possible that 2022 might be the year, I suspect in the long term, we would really want to go for something more fault tolerant. So yeah, I mean, it's an exciting time to be around.
Thanks, Thomas. Excuse me. Does anyone on the panel want to be the first to respond to Thomas?
Yeah, so I think there's certainly valid points, but to go back to what Celia mentioned earlier, that Henry Ford probably didn't make the perfect car straight away. If you think 100 years ago, people probably wouldn't have recognised an Aston Martin as a car, let alone the things it can do. So and with the sort of second quantum revolution, this isn't something that can happen overnight, and there will be different rates of evolution with different technologies. I mean, in the sort of since 2014, since I've been in quantum, just on the computing side, there's been photonic systems have been the de rigueur, then superconductors, or atom traps, then ion traps, annealers. They all kind of move forward at different rates. So I think having the more tools we have in the armory, the better. And I think when, if we look back in 10 years time, and I'll make a long-term prediction because it's a safer bet, but I suspect that maybe more than 10 years, but I suspect there'll be different systems for different applications. So if you look at a photonic system or an analog system, because the potential for having it room temperature, that might be sitting on a trader's desk. You might have, governments might be using a trap or a superconductor, and there'll be sort of different systems for different applications. In all likelihood, you may have an operating system whereby you don't actually know where it's happening, but I think that the different technologies will specialize in different areas, and will mature at different rates as well.
Thanks, John. Rupesh?
Yeah, so I just want to point out, Thomas, thank you. What you're saying is absolutely right, because analog quantum simulators are hard, as quantum computers are hard, but I want to make a distinction between the two. Historically, we've always had simulation in some shape or form, and I remember something from the 60s, which was an electrical simulation of car wheels, suspension on a car. So we've always had something to try and model something else that was either too large, too impractical, too expensive to build. And we have to also remember that when you're building an analog quantum simulator, it's exactly the same as building a quantum computer, except there are no quantum logic gates. So in a sense, it's simpler. It's the same sort of thing you can do from ion traps, you can do with cold atoms. You can do with a bunch of technologies, but without any logic gate operations. So you're not trying to build a computer, you're trying to build a quantum simulator or some kind of quantum process. And then you have applications which you can't simulate classically. So if you've already got the hardware and you don't apply the logic gates, so you don't have all that complexity, then what uses could you put it to? And I think that's quite an exciting field of research.
Thanks so much. And Esperanza, have you got anything you'd like to add as well?
Well, in general, what I would say is that it's part of the process, of technological development, is to face challenges and to see how we might overcome those. And I think the point Thomas raised was a very good one, and I really appreciate it. And regarding also Thomas, I saw your question here, a general question for the panel, asking about why do you think so many companies are eager to push quantum random number generators? And yeah, it's true that, as you point out, purely random numbers are no warranty of flawless classical encryption. And that is true. Yeah, that is absolutely true. Some of us believe, even though pure randomness can offer some advantage, that is my personal take on this. And then you see, true randomness goes beyond encryption. For example, we can use that in Monte Carlo simulations, just to name an example, or also for clinical trials, or sampling. There are many applications that we can think of and require pure randomness, and that is a valuable resource.
John or Rupesh, would you like to add anything to Thomas's other general question about the eagerness to push quantum random number generators?
Yeah, I think as well, it's an interesting point that Esperanza made, because earlier today, actually, I was thinking about things like clinical trials and randomness, and the random number generators actually, for some reason, didn't pop into my head. But I think that people are, over the years, we've worked out that people are very, very bad at creating a framework for random clinical trials and things like that, for actually randomizing things. So actually having chance, I suppose, is better at randomizing, whether it's clinical trials or other things where you need a breadth of the population. And actually the random number generators is a really good way of doing that, but sort of taking it past just the chance of, when someone walks in or what that may be, which in itself is better than actually intentionally trying to randomize things. So I think that's a really interesting point, and actually there's a lot of value, and particularly in the current climate, I think is something that we've all been indoctrinated in over the last couple of years. So I think that's a really interesting thing, and I'll certainly give that more thought.
Random isn't random in the classical world, and that's the problem. But nature is. So the wonderful thing about quantum for me is when you harness quantum properties of the universe to do new things or make improvements, you're actually getting closer to nature. And you're doing things in a better way than has been done before. So, as Esperanza said, absolutely, there are a lot more applications of randomness than people think. But one of the things I love about the quantum industry, because it's cross-cutting, we're talking about random numbers, and who cared about random numbers? Well, when I was in the software industry, we cared about pseudo-random numbers. And if you see a cybersecurity map of the world, you already know that World War III is already happening in the cybersecurity space. So we need better ways of protection. We need better ways of communicating, and quantum is one of the best ways so far as we know it.
And it's funny you speak about nature, because I'm having to really lean forward towards my laptop because it's absolutely pouring down with rain and I can barely hear a thing in my little office in my garden. I love what you said about how we're getting closer to nature. Again, reflecting back on the amazing phone call I had this morning, I was saying that a distinction that I made from my initial phone calls when I was speaking, purely just speaking to physicists and just getting to know them and what they were doing, was that we're going back to nature, but in a more technologically advanced way. And there's so much beauty in that as well. One of my concerns has always been around how that technology could be used, and certainly echo what you were saying before as well, Rupesh, about kind of how there's already some kind of division that seems to be happening, and we don't want that. We kind of want to all come together and do tech differently. One of the questions that I would ask in my early days of kind of coming into this industry would be, okay, so what can this technology do? Because what we seem to do is, for every solution that we then create another problem, and I'm not sure we have that much margin of error with this sort of technology, the potential for this sort of technology. And the response was always, well, that's just how technology is done. We create the thing, and we're really good at creating things. We're not very good at kind of uncreating things. And maybe it's time for us to do things in a different way now. Let's have a look at that lateral broad overview and do things in a different way. So what I'm curious about now is, what are the main challenges that we could potentially foresee within the next 12 months and beyond, or the initial challenges that we're going to be facing? John, if you want to take the mic first.
Yeah, so I think we're all aware of the sort of technical challenges. Quantum is hard. It's not intuitive. we've grown up in a world where it's not how we perceive the world to be. So it comes back to that, you know, it's hard in many ways, it's harder to unlearn than it is to learn. So I think, you know, obviously the technical challenges are both evolving very quickly and well demonstrated. But I think that the challenge, or one of the challenges that aside from that actually is creating, having the interaction, and the solution to that is by creating pathways, bridges, roads, whatever you want to call it, between different arenas. So that could be business to technology, you know, business to technology. It could be academia to industry. It could be employers to employees. It could be nations to nations. So Rupesh and I were on Saturday speaking at the Washington DC quantum computing meetup about building an ecosystem, what an ecosystem was and how you build it. And that integration piece is a big challenge, because if we all silo and just concentrate on this little bit, yeah, you might do something very cool, but you're going to miss out on so much. So a massive challenge, and I think also something that can provide real benefit is making sure those pathways are open for collaboration across verticals. You know, every part of the ecosystem to join those up as much as possible, and make people aware that can be joined up, and what that looks like. I think that's both a challenge, but it also offers huge rewards if we can get that right.
And Daniel, it's great to see that you're back with us. It'd be great to hear your perspectives on, in case you missed it, what the challenges are that we can kind of foresee within the next 12 months and beyond.
Very good. I guess that's the big elephant in the room. Apart from that, managing the hype train, it's a delicate balance, I guess. You know, we want to be enthusiastic. We want to show just how, you know, the promise of the area of technology, of the ecosystem of technologies, but at the same time, you know, the worst thing would be to overpromise and you know, or making promises that are unrealistic, can't be kept, or just wrong. And we have to make sure that I think the community as a whole needs to always temper everything, you know, in terms of its promotion, with, you know, healthy dose of realism. You know, I think making sure that, you know, this hype curve, or whatever, you know, whatever the Gartner hype curve, you know, we have to manage expectations, I think, of the area very carefully.
Esperanza, would you like to add?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the challenges, what it comes to my mind are the challenges of a new industry being born and a new branch of engineering being born. As we are discussing, it is very exciting. And as Daniel said, and I love that, somehow we need to achieve a realistic excitement, because let's face it, and this is something that Professor Isaac Schwann said in a recent conference celebrating the 40 years of the conference where basically quantum computing was born. He said, I mean, quantum computers right now, if we think about them, he said it with more strong words, but the reality is that quantum computers right now, for practical implementations, are integration in businesses are limited, to say the least. However, this must not deter us in the quest of making quantum computing a solid reality. It must act as a motivation, and a realistic motivation, because again, and this is a personal fear of mine, if the quantum industry gets overhyped, that can be an existential risk to the industry. And that is frightening. And I think that we are all very aware of that and working to avoid that happening. So, and then this is from a strategic point of view. If we think about technological challenges, there are pretty big technological challenges as well to be overcome. And hopefully we will be working this out. Oh, Daniel wants to add something, or he's raising his hand.
I just wanted to follow on that, in that we have seen this in quantum computing already, like for instance, if you think of say D-Wave. Now, when D-Wave was first being set up and the initial riding the initial wave, they were making to the rest of the community very, very bold and optimistic statements that we thought were just too overhyped and was a danger to the whole rest of the industry. And luckily it was, I would say, kept at a relatively civil discussion. And I think over the years, they did recognize that they had to temper their statements. And now you hear about, only lately, you know, they have actually announced they are going to pursue conventional forms of quantum computing. Instead of their initial idea of adiabatic or annealing and massively, large numbers of qubits, but less well controlled compared to the conventional approaches. You try to come up with very, very well controlled and connected qubits and build up, through fault tolerance and error correction, large scale quantum computers. So obviously when they started, they had their own approach and they wanted to promote it. But I think in terms of what we've seen in the past, we've seen this danger arise even in the early days of the quantum computing industry. And I think with more players coming into it, the non-experts, increasingly more non-experts trying to evaluate the field, trying to provide their own assessment of the area, there's danger that these inaccurate or overhyped assessments or statements will damage the reputation of the industry.
John, I saw you raise your hand. Did you want to add something else in?
Yeah, I think just quickly, one of the things to the mindset sort of around hype that would help is if we look back over human history, if you go back to Democritus thousands of years ago, then through to, through the kind of the Middle Age and how science has developed. Then there was people like Newton and Galileo. Then quantum was only roughly 100 years, maybe a little bit more, since we actually even had a concept of it or even imagined it. And if you think how long it took for gravity to go from heavier things or denser things drop to objects pulling each other together, then through relativity, curvature of space-time and things like this, if you look at that evolution, and technology does accelerate, but if you think about it, we've only had, for the second quantum revolution, we've only had a very small microcosm of time and come a long way. But these are really hard problems. So to have that mindset rather than think, okay, this is what it should look like, but actually rephrase that and think, actually, this has taken a long time to do in other areas. We need to give ourselves the room to get that right. That mindset, I think, if people think of it that way, could potentially help against the hype. Whether that happens in reality, I'm not so sure.
So to add to John's point, let me give you an example. The first telephone call, which was also the first transatlantic call, was in 1876. The first mobile call was in, I think, 1971 or 1973, I can't remember, the early 70s. The first quantum first quantum chip, a quantum 2.0 chip, I should say, is in a Samsung Galaxy phone, was almost 50 years later. So things actually take longer than people think to get to where we are. The second thing I want to say, just referencing hype, is a field which exists called responsible innovation. And that's largely been at the background, okay? Because if you ask, certainly when I joined the UK Quantum Hub, the feeling amongst researchers was it was a waste of time. And but the funding body didn't think so. And so this is really important because we have to understand the impacts of things as we develop them. Otherwise, nature abhors a vacuum. So somebody's going to say something. And if it's a random person talking about a subject that they're not that familiar with, and then that gets picked up and amplified across the world, you're going to get hype. You're going to get it. You can't steer the conversation. You can't present the conversation in a fair and balanced way. And we've seen that with other technologies, other areas which are critical for humanity, being either misrepresented or hyped, blown out of all proportion. So we need to bring responsible innovation and people who have expertise in that area into the discussion and being more visible.
Esperanza, I didn't know if you just unmuted, if you wanted to add to what Rupesh was just saying, or if you had yourself off mute. I just noticed.
It was actually accidental, but I will take the chance then. The wave function of the universe collapses for, I mean, sometimes things like this happen. And I was actually taking notes at the things that Rupesh was saying, and I love the concept of, well, actually love everything that Rupesh say by default, but I especially loved the concept of responsible innovation, because that hit the nail of the whole concept, and it goes hand by hand with avoiding hype, and also in a broader sense, I think in the quantum community, it's a good thing that we reflect upon the ethical implications of this nascent technology. So beautiful concept, Rupesh, and also beautiful analogy with the historical development of technology.
I really enjoy these conversations because it really echoes how I personally feel. And what's amazing is that I actually do share these talks outside of the quantum and physics world, because there is also, as I mentioned on our last talk, definitely kind of a bridge to be built even with the wider public and with what we do here, because we are in a complete bubble, and more people should hear from, you know, the thought leaders that are behind these technologies, and to know that we really want to do good, and that it really is, you know, wanting to do tech ethically and responsibly, and create a better future. I was saying just earlier, I believe that we were put on this earth to leave it in a better state than when we actually came onto it. And if we can just remember that as we go along, you know, that will go a really long way. I have one final question before, if anybody else wants to ask any questions, but I was really thinking about the lessons that we've actually had from not really just 2021, from 2020 as well. I don't know about you, but I've lost a year. I still think I'm in 2020. I actually have to ask how old I am often, or try and figure it out, because I've lost a year. I'm 24, by the way. But yeah, so what lessons do you think that we have really learned in the last couple of years that we can really implement better strategies going forward? And I'll go to Rupesh to begin with.
Okay, that's as you were talking, what I was thinking about was less about the scientific and technological and business developments. I think they will carry on, but it's actually, for me, it goes back to the people again. And before really, so in my quantum journey is very much being behind the scenes, because when you're developing an ecosystem, you're not, there's so much to do, and so much bridge building and translation and learning of different vocabularies. You have the expertise in the science, but then you have to translate all of that for different audiences. But everyone looked the same. Everyone kind of dressed the same. Everyone, what I've seen over the years now is there's more gender diversity, which is really good. But there is still taking gender aside, everyone still looks the same. So what I want to see, I'm really keen on this. I'm really keen on surfacing the people who are hidden, who have no voice. So what I want to see is normal on such a panel like this going forward is we have people with physical challenges. There are brilliant scientists, brilliant writers, brilliant philosophers, and so on. People who think about the world in many different ways. So it's across STEM and across shape as well. So for those of you who don't know what shape means, it's social sciences, humanities, arts, people, and economy. Because quantum crosscuts, it affects all of us, whether we're directly involved in the scientific and technology or business development of it, or we are the recipients of it in a direct or indirect way. But where are these people? Because they do exist. And why isn't it normal? So it used to be and I'm a little bit older than 24, Natalie. It used to be that that you talk about suits, and you talk about grey suits, okay? And I don't want to see one color. I don't want to see. Let's call it purple. First of all, you have purple men now, and now purple women are allowed, but it's still purple. That's my bugbear. I want to see the beautiful minds. I want to see the passionate souls who maybe don't have expertise in science or maths, but have something to contribute. I.e., they can be fantastic business people. They can be fantastic at connecting people or communicating or raising money or whatever. But getting involved to tackle the challenges that quantum in its generational journey, okay, promises to deliver. And we can only take it so far because of our limited career lifespans and so on. But then how does the next generation, how do we inspire them and grow and foster them, whoever they are? So I want it to be just completely normal that people look different, have different challenges in their lives, but can make that contribution. We focus on the value, we focus on the contribution. And that just becomes normal. And it isn't happening fast enough in other areas. And it's just crazy because, why are we stuck in the 18th, 19th century, for goodness sake, or even worse, earlier. So this has to be tackled because for this industry to succeed, we need everyone. Anyway, that's my tuppence worth.
That was TED Talk worthy. I enjoyed that. Daniel, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I would like to definitely agree with Rupesh's point. We do need diversity. We need a multiplicity of viewpoints, perspectives, within and without the community. I mean, even within the community itself, I think there's greater scope for greater interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, communication between the different areas, different systems, different levels, from pure academia to applied to theory experiment to engineers to business development, social planning, end users, all players within, all stakeholders, all players within the community. We need those people who have the needs, who have the applications, to talk with the solutions, or those people developing the solutions. Even within those people developing solutions, there's still quite large divides between different areas and sub areas. And I think that there's great opportunities there where you start combining different systems, different aspects of different physical systems, but also different applications and technologies together. So really just getting everyone to communicate better with each other and to communicate their not only their problems and requirements, but also what they can also offer to each other.
Esperanza, over to you.
Well, I'm actually clapping at both Daniel and Rupesh because I couldn't agree more with their views. And I was thinking about what is at the root of this conversation that we are having, which is actually the elephant in the room that Daniel so brilliantly exposed. Well, the elephant there are some, right? And one of the biggest one is that quantum computing and quantum technologies are hard, really hard. Maybe one of the hardest challenges we are facing. And that is why we need everyone in not only in the community, in everything really. And this brings to my mind similar insight by MIT professor William Oliver. And he said, we need people from all walks of life here. Yes, we need the engineers, the scientists, the business people, everyone, and also the philosopher, the artists, everyone is needed to tackle this and also to extract the value in this, and as well keeping overhyping at bay. For example, let me share a personal experience of me. My father, he's a visual artist, now retired. Well, what happens when you give a book on quantum physics to a visual artist? Well, first of all, he's not very impressed. And that is a humility lesson about the computational space he lives in. So everyone is welcome to tackle this, and I can only reinforce that message.
John, you are the last person, aren't you now?
Yes,
I've got this right.
I think funny enough, speaking of parents, actually, my mother, she's always quite interested in it, but because it was me more than anything else. Until one of the first talks we gave on entangled positions, where after watching Rupesh, she said, "Oh, I understand it more than I ever had." So I thought 70 minutes with Rupesh was 7 years with me. So, so I don't know quite what that says and whether I've been left to last because of that. But but coming back to the original question, actually, when you mentioned that, I actually wrote down opportunity through adversity. And there's a phrase that I like, that the hardest steel is forged in the hottest fire. And So during the sort of the pandemic, and I was stuck in Brazil for some time, unable to fly back. All of my laptops were broken because of the humidity, couldn't get them fixed, so I wasn't able to work for a few months. And there's worse places to be than Rio and places like that. But coming back, it was that was a real motivator. And I think if following on from Rupesh's point, if you take that to the next level, both in terms of adversity and success, if you look at someone like Stephen Hawking and the cards he was played, and I often wonder whether he would have been quite so brilliant or driven had he had a different physical reality. And it's impossible to answer that, but it's something that comes into my mind just to sort of muse over, really. And I think that as Daniel mentioned, that we do need as many people as possible pulling in the right direction. And Roops and I had the talk on the weekend, and we sort of coined a phrase, if you want to get involved in quantum, get involved in quantum. And that's probably a message that needs to be repeated, and not just in our own circles, but actually to the wider world. Because even if you look at it from a mercenary perspective, actually by getting as many bright, energetic minds involved with different skills, different backgrounds, different visions, that's something that, we see that diverse teams are higher performing on average. So even if you look at it from a mercenary perspective, there's a lot of reason to do that, let alone the, doing it for, for the sort of the ethical side of things. So, and that, I think that with most of us, that the ethical side of things resonates very strongly. But then you're going to have some people that they're worried about, what the accounts look like, profit and loss and things like that. Well, actually, there's an argument for those people as to why this is important. So that's being able to pull these strands together, particularly when something isn't it is different to our normal reality. Well, actually, we need these different minds, these different ways of thinking, and something that a few of us have spoken about previously is educating the younger generation, and not just senior school or high school age, but when children are much younger, they're not conditioned to believe the things that we experience. So if you say that things can be in two places at once, or you can be in sort of two states at the same time, that's not that uncommon. That's just play to them, or reading books. So actually that may become more intuitive, and as they grow up, they're able to visualize things that is harder to, because they haven't had to unlearn that and be told it's wrong. So again, this is something that I could sort of wax lyrical about all day, but I'm conscious of being concise. But I think, there are some really important messages there.
And I just want to add to that, if I may. We have to change the way, or tackle being afraid to fail. Because it's a bit crazy, right? So I'm thinking about a baby that is just learning to walk. You see it dragging its way across the floor, getting up, and then falling over again and dragging itself across, until it gets better and better. And we never say to it, right, you're a failure. We don't expect it to run a marathon in under 2 hours. Except we expect that from quantum computing or whatever else, from technology development. We have these unrealistic expectations. And then everybody's looking around at each other and saying, okay, well, I want to try and be a winner. I don't want to look like I'm going to fail. And then you can't innovate. So we have to be happy with taking risks. We have to be happy with the consequences, and we have to be happy carrying on. So what can you discover? Well, I'm going to take an example from a holiday to Spain from a long time ago. And I'm a bit of a nightmare when we go walking, just so anybody knows, if I ever walk with you, I always say, what's over that hill? Or what's around the corner? What's around the bend? And a friend I was with was getting quite exasperated with me because I was always doing this. And I said, yeah, let's just go over there and just see. I was just curious. And we discovered a castle. We would never have seen a castle if we hadn't run the bend. I had no idea what we'd do. But if we have a mindset of prove to me that this is, you're going to see something worthwhile, then I will go with you, then we're having the wrong conversation. We've got the wrong mindset. The whole point of science is to discover new things. That means you have to do things that's never been done before. But if the community then bites your hand off or bites your head off for doing so, it's not good. And so you don't have an innovation culture. If you're all doing the same things and saying the same things, how can you tell innovation is happening? And that's one of my bugbears for quantum algorithms, is you see lots of papers on development of different kinds of algorithms. But how is anyone supposed to know what improvement there is relative to others? Are we heading upwards? Are we developing things better? Or is it just decimal point improvements? So, we've got to change the way we communicate, and we've got to have different mindsets. Then we can, I think, allow ourselves a little bit of that feeling of being pioneering, which sounds like hype to other people. But what is over that hill is a genuine question, because you can see that hill, but you don't know what's behind that hill. The question is, who's got the courage to go and look?
And I would just like to add, Rubes, next time you're over, I don't mind you walking around the bend or driving around the bend. That's absolutely fine. But I do concur with that, because you kind of, if you don't have that tolerance for failure, you kind of fall into the mindset of, well, this is how we've always done it, so we'll keep doing that. And that just maintains the status quo at best. So I certainly do concur with that. And it reminded me of a statement that Danica Hannon, who is a colleague at Quantum Strategy Institute of Esperanza, and I, and she said one of her favorite things within quantum is that, and I'm paraphrasing this, I'm probably not going to say it as quite as well as Danica did, but it was kind of along the lines of, every day you can kind of, look up and you're able to learn something new. You're able to approach things with a naivety, and that's a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that. And I think that quantum offers that in a way that very few, if any, other arenas do. And that curiosity, it should be fueled. It should be a burning furnace, and something that we really nurture. And okay, that needs to be channeled in certain ways, but actually parts of it, why conform to what we know and try and make incremental gains? I think, Rupesh, you've given a wonderful story about designing a horse. So I don't know whether you want to tell that story, because I think that fits quite nicely with the narrative.
Well, why don't you tell it, John?
Well, because I'm not as good at it. Actually, it was a cheetah, wasn't it, rather than a horse?
So the analogy is this. So this is just from my time in startup. So this is how I try to simplify communication of something really complex. So you start off, you have this idea, and you believe it's going to change the world in some shape or form. And in your mind, so just using an animal metaphor, in your mind it's a cheetah. It's powerful, it's fast, that's what you want. And then you deal with the real world. So you're trying to raise investment, you're trying to persuade people to join, you're trying to, you have to make 1,001 compromises. So what you end up with is a baby hippo. Now, being positive, you think, yeah, well, let's get started with that, but that's going to change into a cheetah along the way. Okay, it never does, by the way. It just becomes a bigger version of itself. Maybe it's a bit more leaner, maybe a bit more muscled, maybe a bit more flexible, better ballerina dancer if you if you're a Disney fan. But then something like quantum comes along, right? So by now you're earning some revenue, hopefully you're succeeding, you've got a group of people around that hippopotamus, or maybe a family of them, and they know how to deal with that. The cheater's gone from your mind because now you're grown up as a company, and now there's bills to pay, revenue to generate, lives to look after. And then quantum comes along, and that's Pegasus, the winged horse, not the spy software. And then how do you deal with that? Because that's suddenly now you're thinking of new capabilities beyond even being a cheater. And so how do you change? How do you pivot? Because if you don't, your competitors will. Or some upstart will come along and just change everything, just like Google did, just like Microsoft did, and so on. And that will continue. So, it speaks to the dangers of getting comfortable. So you have to do the things that are in the comfort zone, because for a company that means revenue, that means new products and services, and maintaining those, but also operating outside your comfort zone, because otherwise you can't innovate. So was that the one, John? That's
that was indeed the one. Much better than I could have told it.
Amazing. Oh, we could talk for hours more. I'm sure it would be great to open up the questions to all of the listeners. I know that Lorraine had a question. Lorraine, I don't know if you want to take the mic and ask the question, if you want me to relay it.
Hi, thank you. So my question is, we have talked about the right dosage of hype, and also the year ahead, how to get other people involved. And that is what I'm also interested in doing for Zimbabwe. But I don't know the right words, or I don't know if they are right or wrong words to use, but I don't want to oversell it. But at the same time, I want to have the right approach when trying to get other people involved. Obviously, I can't get everyone involved, but at least if I get ideas on how to get a few more people involved, it makes the difference. And people like my own classmates, I mean, there are people who are doing IT yet still, maybe I don't have the right words to convey with them. So I wanted ideas, or maybe some ways you have approached people or communicated with them and it has worked. Thank you.
So I'll open this up. Whoever would like to respond first. I'll go with whoever's the quickest to unmute.
Okay, I'll go first. So this is so Lorraine, nice to see you. And yes, this is the whole challenge of ecosystem development, because you've got lots of different voices, starting with who you know and starting to talk about what quantum is and its potential and application areas, and see where the interest is. Because there's lots of people who like to hear about it, but what you actually want is people to get involved. So you need to find people with a skin in the game, as they say in the States. You want to find people who say, yeah, I want to get involved with this, I want to do something. So for example, over here in Argentina, one of the things that the first outputs of the ecosystem here is team etiquette, which is 4 of us, so which includes me and 3 English professors. And that's to boost English language training. So future Argentine students can collaborate with the rest and engage with the quantum community around the world. But they have to improve their English to do so. And in order to do that, there are other things that quantum brings in, like its potential impact, like the ethics, like doing research and presenting them, writing skills, all kinds of things that are, I'm not expecting the teachers to become STEM teachers, because they're not. So investigate, have conversations, different ways. You've got to move and explore, and see what catches light from all the sparks you're generating. Your job is to generate sparks, and see what catches light, and then to try and develop that in whatever shape it is. With businesses, it's going to be different. It's going to be trickier because then you're talking about quantum readiness. But first, you've got to build the awareness before you can build the readiness, before you can build the economy. So take it step by step, but try different routes, different avenues in parallel, and have fun with it. You're the ambassador for quantum, so smile and light people up with your enthusiasm. That's what's needed at this stage.
And if I may as well, Lorraine. So first of all, I think be aware that you're doing a great job. First of all, that's a good thing. We've spoken about how things are hard, but don't neglect the work you're already doing. It's fantastic, and we all respect that. So what you're doing with One Quantum Zimbabwe, and working together with the wider African chapters and the global chapters, this is important. And if you think in the UK, for example, and we've spoken about this before, so there's organizational infrastructure advantages in the UK, but it's rare that I speak to someone with your enthusiasm. So we need to be able to harness that. And I think one of the things actually that when sort of speaking with candidates, that there's often a focus on what skills do you have, what money do you want, but actually the most important question that I ask anytime I speak to a candidate is, what are your goals and aspirations? What are you most interested in? And particularly within quantum, that this is the technology that underpins the physical universe. So pretty much, maybe not at this stage, but in due course, this will potentially have an application that can touch every area of life that you can think of. So actually focusing that on what you're interested in, as Ruth said, it will make it more fun for you. But that drive and passion will really shine through. And enthusiasm is like a smile. If you smile, or if you're enthusiastic, it passes on to someone else, and there's potentially no end to that. So first of all, keep doing what you're doing, because you're doing a great job. And actually focus on those that the parts that are interesting to you, and you might find that actually leads to more people around, and you spark that enthusiasm, and then it's a ripple effect. That if you start squaring, if you start squaring something, 2, then 4, then 8, then 16. Potentially you've got that to grow quickly, and you'll have other enthusiastic people, and obviously you've got the support of One Quantum globally, and the whole quantum community as well. So we all want you to be successful, so and we're all here to help each other.
Esperantha or Daniel, have you got anything that you'd like to add for Lorraine's question?
I'd say, just there are a lot of activities that people can get involved in, which they can just start off with. I mean, without too much pre-existing knowledge in, say, quantum theory or anything like that. I mean, just to get an idea of just working the space. So for instance, there are some online organizations like QWorld, which this has been mentioned before, and it's a free activities organizations. I mean, they run research projects. They also run educational programs to get people to get into the area. obviously it helps if if people have a sort of a programming background, or just have some sort of prior experience in just being able to do a little bit of coding. But I think a lot of the interest is from people who have a little bit of interest in programming or coding, and so they can get into these kind of activities very easily, right? It doesn't cost anything. You can do it from from your home. Very important these days, I guess. And it just ignites that spark of interest, right? This is like the thin end of the wedge. People can just get a little insight, little window into this world, and then from that they can then explore, on their own terms, I guess. It's just getting that initial hook into this area where they can then grow their interest.
Esperanza, have you got any wisdom you'd like to share?
Well, it's actually pretty much a recap of what it has been said, and I absolutely agree with what John said about enthusiasm, and as well as Rupesh about saying find the spark and grow those sparks, and also Daniel about piquing curiosity in a sense. And but my bottom line of all of this to you, Lorraine, is keep on doing what you're doing and do as much as you can, and everything will come afterwards. So this is pretty much the only thing that I can say to you. Keep up the awesome job and keep on doing what you're doing and do as much as you can.
We love you, Lorraine. You're amazing. AJ also had a question. Do you want to take the mic?
Thank you. There's just one. This is more like an observation, writing on what Lorraine said. I'm in an area where in the general Baltimore area, we have our big neighbors down south in the Washington area, and they have a massive setup and stuff. The thing is, I'm in a good area, good university and stuff. Problem, what I see is a lot of people who are like outwardly quantum enthusiasts, but I don't see them doing the walk. And I'm not wanting to be judgmental, but it's not about look at them, but it's just like, I hear everything, but it's like you're not investing into making relationships with any quantum provider or anything, and you're just talking about quantum this, quantum that, as if it will solve everything. By the way, I come from a CS background, and so it's the CS department that I'm talking about. And visiting the University of Maryland College Park, you see the difference in which is like they have the whole thing. And I don't expect my own university, which is smaller, but it's also very competent, to do the same. But it just like grates me a little bit when people talk the talk to a degree that they don't walk the walk. And I don't want to come across as judgmental. I'm just like, what should I sort of do to find my way through this in a general, like if I want to find, if I want to get my university sort of involved. And I also know that I can only lead the horse to the water. I can't like make it drink. So I'm fully aware, but it's just like something that cheesed me off a little bit. If you have any comments, sorry, I'll stop now.
I was going to say, John, did you want to go first on this one?
Danny had his hand up, so please.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I can just go via my own experience in that it takes time, right? It takes time to develop an activity. It's good that maybe they're paying lip service to the field, but at least they recognize that it is something that they should be involved in, right? They should be seen to be involved in. And sometimes you just have to be patient that hopefully something will develop from that, right? From my own experience, when I joined my present institution, I mean, there was good, solid academic research in this area, but there wasn't that drive to make it into a technology, right? To actually produce applications, try to engage with industry, right? And it's been taken quite a long time to get to the stage where we are now in the position saying that, you know, we are one of the strongest places, well, yeah, one of the places in you know, in the country who, you know, does have really dedicated activities to really push towards applications, towards technologies, towards engagement with industry. And but it's taken a long time to get to that point, right? And it's really because you have to demonstrate it. You have to enact the change. If you don't see it being done, sometimes you just have to go and start doing things, and eventually people, you know, hopefully they'll follow. You know, they'll see the worth of what you're doing, see the worth of the activities, and it won't be just simply a box ticking exercise or just something to note on their website. It will be something that they will really dedicate resources and real effort to. So so I think generally I would just say it can take some time, but sometimes it is something that you just have to really you know, make the first, I guess, real efforts, and to see, hopefully people will follow you.
And I think to add to that as well, that I think within anything there's likely to be people that want to take shortcuts and be seen as doing something. Natalie showed me some videos on TikTok of people talking about quantum that absolutely have no clue what they're talking about, and people follow, and that's something we do want to avoid, but I don't think that's something we can control. But then there are a lot of people that I know personally, I call friends, that their background isn't in quantum, but they've got a real drive to make something in quantum for themselves. And actually that is something that is important, and we do need to encourage the people like that and make a pathway for them. And it may be they're not clear in exactly what they can do, because they're not they need to go through that journey. And aside from that, there's also the opportunity aspect. So some people have less opportunity. So we focused before about a lot of quantum literature being written in English. So how does that translate to other languages? And we're seeing that happening, but you know, there may be people that are in more remote areas that simply don't have the access. Some people don't have internet and things like this. So not everyone's race is run at the same pace. And I think that when there's a genuine desire, I think that should be encouraged and nurtured. I think the danger is having the people that claim expertise they don't have. And we live in a world now where you can convey a message to millions of people, and you don't necessarily have to have expertise to be listened to. But that's a wider symptom of the world we live in. And I don't think that, given the popularity of even formats like Zoom, but given the you know, the way popularity works and how people are influenced these days, you know, it doesn't necessarily come from a place of knowledge always. And that's probably a bigger societal problem than just quantum. So I don't know, that's probably raised more questions than answers, but hopefully it shed a bit of light and context on it.
So first of all, how do you pronounce your name?
It's Ajinkya, or just AJ. I'm fine with either.
Okay, AJ, you're Ajinkya. Okay, fine. So nice to meet you, and a great question, right? So how do you deal with the noise of the world? And where is the signal within that noise? So what has value and what doesn't? Right. So one of the things, you know, so my observations, you know, being business for a long time, is you know, I celebrate when, for example, companies raise money, because it shows they're advancing. But you can't press your way to progress, though people try. It's part of the noise. It shows you're doing something. but within that, you lose where you can't articulate value. Because raising money is great, but then you have to deliver on your promises, which is hard. It doesn't matter whether you're an academic, on a grant or a private company raising investment. My advice to you is to start, if you're looking at this and saying, okay, well, some people are just talking rubbish. There'll always be people talking rubbish. They've done it throughout humanity's existence, and will continue to. And the internet has made it a lot easier, right, to distribute messages. It's the same thing I would say to Lorraine, is to be the leader, is to lead, and then you set the values you want to set. Stop looking at everybody else. What are you doing? My question to you, AJ, is what are you doing? What are you prepared to do? What are your values then? You're saying, I'm sensing, I'm getting from you that you want to be authentic and you want to, have grounded discussions and real discussions that are meaningful, right? So create the atmosphere, the environment by which that happens.
Gotcha. Yeah, it just, I'm not a defense, but what I just clarification. What I did see was like people talking, and it's like, okay, these guys know what they're talking about, and then some months go by and stuff, and then things are revealed. It's like, it's not that people don't know. That's not the problem, because obviously I don't know as well, and it should be, hubris shouldn't be a part of it. But like when things are claimed and claimed to in such a hyper superlative way that. But yeah, you're right. Like it starts from us. And obviously, everybody's not going to, we have to figure out our own way. Not that everybody is forced to like come up along. That's not, yeah, I got you.
Yeah, but having strong values, I think, is key. And look, part of my problem, for the last over 5 years, I was at Oxford University, and that UK quantum ecosystem, I can tell you a lot about it because I helped develop it, but I was walking it and pioneering lots of it. Okay. When I do talks now, it's usually at a very high level because it's at an ecosystem level. You can't do too many deep dives because the subject itself is complicated. It's not just about the physics. It's not just about computer science. It's not just about engineering. All those things are important. It's not just about programming languages and software libraries. It's how everything integrates and works together and improves. And to do that, you need funding. To do that, you need regulation. To do that, you need whole lawyers and a whole body of other people that as a student, you don't care about because you care about your subject matter and, getting your grades and maybe following your passion somewhere, right? And so turn your frustration into an opportunity. If you say this stuff is just too much hot air, then create something that is not hot air then. And you can do it. You've got the skills, you've got the interest, the passion. Well, you've got the frustration, that's for sure. And you can make something of it. And then people say, hey, look at AJ, what AJ's doing. And you'll attract people who are, sympathetic to that, who are tuned to what you want as well. Then it's valuable. I look forward to seeing what you're doing. Invite me onto something.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Esperanza, do you want to add anything?
Well, what I would add to this is that we humans have a curious ability to detect genuinity and and authenticity at very instinctive level. So as Rupesh was saying, what I would advise is talk the talk and walk the walk, or even better, walk the walk and then talk the talk. And when you are authentic, people feel that. And if you have the credentials to the message you are delivering, people will follow. So my advice, would be that walk the walk and then talk the talk. The other way around, it can be tricky. So the order matters in this case.
Dom, would you like to take the mic and ask your question or contribute?
Hi everyone. I hope that for me it would be I guess not an extension to this conversation. It's more of another question. So I'll jump in when everyone else is done, I guess.
Yeah, you are free to ask your question. And thank you, AJ, for that question as well. That was thought-provoking.
All right, wonderful. So hi everyone, I'm Dom. Thank you, John. John was the one who invited me onto this panel. This is my first time listening to you guys all speak, and it's been wonderful hearing you guys so far. A bit about myself is I'm an entrepreneur living in Montreal, and I've recently just sold my company, and I'm looking to get more involved in the quantum computing space. I had some interest in it before, sort of keeping up with how the industry was moving and sort of a on the surface level understanding of how quantum computing worked. And so now, since I've sold my previous company, I'm diving more into the science and the mathematics and trying to get a better understanding of how quantum computing works, so I can get more involved and hopefully change my career path to be to get into quantum computing with you guys. But unlike the majority of you all with sort of a CS and engineering background, I'm more of an economics / sales / business development side, and was wondering what you guys had as far as advice for someone in my position who wouldn't necessarily be recruited for as a PhD candidate in quantum computing or as an engineer to help develop some of the technologies, but as someone who would help out more on the business admin side with the sales or any of those, I guess, business areas rather than the tech engineering side. Thanks.
Can I jump in, because this is I love startups. I'm not a fan of big companies and big organizations, but I love startups. So Dom, really nice to meet you. What I would say for start is that the business skills that you have, your business experience and growing a company, are absolutely critical skills for quantum startups who don't know how to do it. Okay, so whether they're in deep tech, whether they're developing software / algorithms, whether they're trying to address business problems, which is more of a challenge, okay? Because the reality is it's early. The reality is that the machines need to dramatically improve their error rates. So for example, if you have a machine that has a, let's say 10 to the -3 error rate optimistically, if you want to do a derivatives calculation for fintech, for pricing some instruments, you need roughly 10 to the -5 error rate, okay? So there's some things you just simply can't do today or do really, really badly. However, one of the frustrations that I have, because I straddle both that business side from startups and also the scientific side, is that you have lots of brilliant people who don't understand business. So in the early days of quantum, and by early days I mean for a few years, and you still get it, you'll have lots of equations of quantum mechanics, equations that nobody's got a chance of understanding. And so the investors, when faced with this, didn't know where the value was. So originally, the investment profile was, if it's got quantum in it, give them money. So it's kind of scattergun. Then as investors became more savvy, they changed to say, well, academics changed and started taking the equations out. The investors responded by saying, put them back in, because we really don't understand where the value is, and we're going to give it to somebody else as a consultant to try and work out where the value is. Do you have something or not? And it's this articulation of business value, of growing companies, of taking it and raising investment that are essential skills in quantum that many don't have. There isn't even a communication base or even an understanding that you've got to be nice to your team and grow them. Because sometimes research cultures, which is typically where you hire your people from, because you know them, some research cultures do management by shouting, which does not work, as you know, Dom. And how you manage that transition from an academic environment to more business focused, deadlines, creating value and growth and generating revenue and getting everyone then up to speed and pushing in that same direction. Those are essential skills. So I see you, we haven't met before, but I see you as leading that. That's a great contribution you can make.
I think if I might just add to that as well, we were talking about diversity of skills and experience earlier. And if you say that the vertical is the scientists, computer scientists, engineers, and then you have the horizontal business people as one of those struts. As Rupesh said, these are within quantum, nobody knows everything. So, and this is hard. So if you're focusing on a very hard algorithm or creating a laser system, do you know how much time have you got to develop your business skills, your communication skills, getting the message to market? And actually, in the years that I've been in quantum, I've seen the evolution from pretty much all PhDs, sort of uni spin outs, some really cool science projects, and then over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, we've seen more product roles or application roles. We're also seeing that a lot more business focused roles. There's been things like brand ambassadors who are reaching out to potential clients within the classic arena to demonstrate that or to discuss what the potential uses are, whilst at the same time discussing what potential use cases for their products may be. And from those conversations, that stimulates further development, because people that are making the technologies don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the businesses that are going to use them. So that consultation piece actually filters back to the next iteration of various products as well. So to echo what Rupesh was saying, it's that quantum needs people like you. And I didn't come from a scientific background. I came from a recruitment background. So we've got that one covered. We don't need more. But jokes aside, though, these skills are important. And actually, as someone that does come from a business background, I can vouch that if you do things authentically, if you're genuine, and you provide a valuable contribution, people are willing and welcoming and do want to help. And you'll find that actually the door is always open to good people that can bring new things. And in some conversations, I have conversations with people I'm absolutely in awe of, and I still find it strange that they listen to what I'm saying, because but when we look at it, Rupesh said about the having the sort of the high level or having a wide vantage point. That's something that not everyone's got. So being able to bring that to the equation, it adds a nice contrast to other people's visibility. So it does take a little while to get used to the kind of nuances, but it's a fun journey.
So my comment here would be to reiterate, the valuable role that non specialists, non-technical people can bring to the area. is that we're still very, very much trying to find the applications and the use cases. And we need people who are able to translate between, you know, some knowledge of what the technology can do and also interacting with the businesses, with the end users, those downstream stakeholders. You know, in quantum computing, you know, there is, yeah, I think that's probably quite well developed. But in other areas of quantum technologies, it's still, I still think that there's quite a lot of solution looking for a problem, right? So finding the problems, finding those people who have requirements, have needs, and putting two and two together. I think there's still a lot of opportunity there. And actually, if you find the right application and the right technology to fulfill that application, I think there's quite a lot of worth there.
Could I just jump in before Esperanza speaks, because I want to address that point, Dom, which is, so take D-Wave, for example. D-Wave polarizes opinion depending on who you talk to, okay, in terms of the technology, the science, and so on. However, you know, if you look at it from a business point of view, so take a specific use case. And forgive me if I get this wrong, but I think there's an organization called Save On Foods in Canada, and they used to do 25 hours of compute time a week on various things. Then working with D-Wave on a kind of prototype sort of workflow application, that got reduced to 2 minutes. Now, for me, the business value is super clear. Even though if you get into the, you know, even though if you talk to academics and stuff, there may be opposition to the technology and the way things were done, and perhaps you could do it better classically. All of these arguments come to the fore. But come on, 25 hours freed up, you know, to 2 minutes means you can start asking more intelligent questions, start building better relations with your customers, with your inventory, with the warehousing, with all your staff as well. There's lots of potential opens up. And for me, that's a clear demonstration of business value, not necessarily scientific value, but there you have it.
Yes, that example by Rupesh is a great one. And what I would add to all of this, Dom, is get involved. I mean, find the quantum community where you are based, for example, or or take education, or see events like this we are having. Get involved in the community. And indeed, I share the views that you have very valuable skills to bring to the community. And I think it also would be really, really interesting to complement those skills if you haven't already done so, to complement that with training in quantum. Training comes in many forms. And I always advise to explore different options to see which is the best one for you. And it's always a good thing to have a certificate. That is always a good thing.
Yeah, I just want to also just add on to, you know, you're in Montreal, and Canada has a very, very strong recognition and investment in quantum technologies in general. I work with colleagues at in Waterloo at the Institute for Quantum Computation, Perimeter Institute. Obviously, you know, they are a very strong area. Calgary is also strong. Montreal, in that area, you know, there are you know, really good quantum computing research groups there. So, reach out. I think within Canada, it's a lot of opportunity there. And I think, they are one of the, considering its size on the world stage, it's, one of the strongest, strong players in the field.
Yeah, Canada's recently put forward a national strategy. One Quantum Canada has recently started up, just to plug One Quantum a bit. So there's a lot going on and lots to get involved in. Good luck.
And just on that plugging note, I'm actually working with, as One Quantum UK president, I'm working with One Quantum Canada to put a careers fair together sometime in early 2022 as well. So details yet to be confirmed, but that's something else that may be worth keeping an eye out for.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks a lot for your advice, and there we go. Thanks again, everyone. I think I'll reach out to some of you guys individually, to sort of pick your brains more about the material, and I'll definitely sit in more on these discussions because it's been a lot of fun. Thanks again.
And Dom, Ajink has put a couple of comments in the chat section for you as well to check out. So, well, this has been fabulous. Thank you everybody for your insights today, and for having me as the hostess today, even if I was a little bit loose and fast with my age. trying to make myself younger than what I am.
We're all 21 here, right?
Yeah, we all are. We don't age in quantum. This is one of the amazing qualities. It's a spooky effect. We don't age, but it's been amazing. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you everybody for your input today, and we will see you all again next time.
Yeah, and just with regards to next week, so we're back at the same time with another outstanding panel where we have Anahita Zardoshti, Chris Bishop, Michelle Lamper, Farai Mazandu, and Danica Hannon. So
wow,
what's not to like there?
What a panel.
So I'll see you all next week, and thanks to all of our guests today. It's been fantastic as always, and thanks for the audience for providing such great stimulus.